be back at the Monkey Bar on Monday evening at 7:20 for the start of a new series with Corky, Sarah and Jake.
Tonight at 10:15, the last of the Evergreen Years recalls 1935 and the early days of television, immortalised here by Adele Dixon.
There's joy in store, the world is at your door. It's here for everyone to view, conjured up in sound and sight by the magic rays of light that bring television to you.
The Evergreen Years, tonight at 10:15. Now it's 9 o'clock, time for the news.
Half the world backs Argentina over the Falklands. Mrs. Thatcher says it won't make any difference, but losing American support has upset her.
I found the vote of the United States incomprehensible and disappointing.
The health unions are back at ACAS tonight. Is there a new offer? The bus fares that are too cheap, the government wants to cut subsidies. France's film Funny Man has died. And Britain is fighting a losing battle in the Whiteman Cup. Good evening. The Prime Minister has reacted firmly to the United Nations vote calling for negotiations with Argentina over the Falklands. She said the result would make no difference to Britain's attitude. We couldn't start talks with Argentina so soon after the conflict. Mrs. Thatcher was particularly upset by the American decision to vote against Britain. It was incomprehensible, she said. We've always tried to be true friends to the United States. At a news conference in Paris, after her talks with President Mitterrand, Mrs. Thatcher was asked if she saw the General Assembly vote as a defeat.
No, I don't see it as a defeat for Britain in any way. The vote will make no difference at all to our attitude, which has already been stated on the Falkland Islands. We believe in self-determination. We shall not start negotiations with the Argentines. We cannot start them so soon when memories are fresh in everyone's minds. We have no doubt about our sovereignty, and the Falkland Islanders are British and wish to stay British.
Mrs. Thatcher was then asked about America's decision to line up against Britain in the vote.
I thought it was incomprehensible and disappointing. We've always tried to be staunch and true friends to the United States.
The man who commanded British land forces in the Falklands conflict, Major General Sir Jeremy Moore, described the UN resolution as offensive. He said it was offensive because of the young men who'd been killed and injured, and because it suggested Britain should ignore the views of the Falkland Islanders. The UN vote backing an Argentine resolution went heavily against Britain, 90-12. That had been expected, but there was also a surprisingly high number of abstentions, 52, and that pleased the British delegation. From New York, Martin Bell reports on the UN decision.
The General Assembly for once was energized, the chamber was full, and 33 countries were moved to explain their votes before they cast them. Votes that wouldn't be binding on anyone, but would be significant as an expression of world opinion. It was a last chance for the British to bid for support.
My delegation will vote no to indicate that we shall resist any renewed Argentine pressure on the Falklands.
The vote was then taken, and the result of months of lobbying decided in seconds.
Will all delegates in favor of the draft resolution please signify by pressing the green button? Opposed, the red. Abstentions, yellow.
There were a lot of abstentions, more than 50 of them. The Latin American countries and Soviet bloc went solidly with Argentina, but the rest did not, on a 60-40 split. Congratulations were showered on the Argentine foreign minister, but the British described it as a hollow victory.
There's no question but that the figures were against us as regards yes and no's. But I was very pleased about the number of abstentions. And that was what we were asking most of our friends to do, to abstain. As for life in the Falklands, I don't think it will make any difference at all. As for Britain's attitude to the Falklands and to the dispute, and as to our obligations, no difference whatsoever.
Are you angry about the Americans' vote against us?
Angry is not the word I would use now, 2 days after 3 days after I heard of it. I think I will resist the temptation to answer your question in more detail.
But you would be somewhat less than delighted.
Very true.
It was, in the end, a vote that had something for everyone. And if you wonder how important it was, well, perhaps there are some General Assembly votes that don't matter more than others don't matter. And on that scale, this one mattered.
The Press Council has delivered its verdict on last month's row over the Falkland Campaign Honours List. The government gave the list to newspapers and broadcasting organisations nearly 3 days before it wanted the details published. This embargo was broken, and the Press Council said today it deplored the breach of a system useful to both the media and the government. But the Council said the government was unrealistic in expecting competing news organisations to wait such a long time, particularly as news of the 2 Victoria Cross Awards had already been published. In Argentina, soldiers who'd fought British paratroops at Goose Green have marched past a memorial to their war dead. It's unfinished, and according to the authorities there, will remain so until they regain control of the Falklands. President Mitterrand's decision that France should abstain in the Falklands vote lightened the atmosphere during his talks in Paris with Mrs. Thatcher. But the two leaders are still far apart on the long-standing issue of Britain's payments to the common market budget. It was agreed, though, that senior British and French officials should now meet once a month to discuss EEC differences. From Paris, our diplomatic editor, John Simpson.
France's decision to vote the way Britain wanted at the UN ensured that, whatever other problems there were, the atmosphere was good. Monsieur Mitterrand, having earlier decided to support Argentina, changed his mind. Amid the slightly overblown splendours of the Élysée Palace, Monsieur Mitterrand made his other points against Britain over Mrs. Thatcher's demand for a long-term reduction in Britain's EEC payments. France, its economy in trouble, is anxious not to have to pay more. But the Falklands effect was operating in Paris. From now on, British and French officials will meet once a month to work on current problems, even the immense problems of agriculture, presided over by France's glamorous minister, Madame Cresson, will be discussed. Monsieur Mitterrand is still determined to wring concessions from Britain, but his decision to back Mrs. Thatcher at the UN was calculated to help. And when I spoke to the Prime Minister later, she was still pleased about that.
I was glad they weren't going to support Argentina in what I regarded was a very cynical resolution. And I was amazed that so many people were taken in by it. But not France, and she was prepared to give a lead to others. I think there's been a temporary aberration with the United States. It's hurtful. I don't think it'll last.
And it won't change your attitude to the Americans?
We've tried always to be friendly to them because we believe in the same things. We shall continue to be friends because we believe the same things.
The British contingent came here intending to warm up relations with France. President Mitterrand, always pro-British, has shown willing, even though both sides would accept that none of the problems between them has gone away. What we've seen here has been the start of a new alignment. The Americans have cold-shouldered